We made this.
Welcome to the Starlight Ballroom. Hey!
Hello and welcome to Shipwrecked and Comatose, the podcast about Red Dwarf here on the We Made This Podcast Network. My name's Mark Adams and I am your host for this episode, Series 3, episode fucking hell.
You did a full 10 countdown with your fingers so we could see you do that, and you fucked it up on your favourite episode.
I know. The third episode.
Just say it twice, because if you say season 3 twice, that's 6. Maths.
The third episode.
This is starting well.
It's going to be a long night. At least we've got a smeg up.
No, that's going in.
Fuck off!
Yep, definitely needs to go in.
The third episode of Series 6, Gunmen of the Apocalypse. My name is Mark Adams and I am your host for what has been incredibly unsubtly pitched as my favourite episode of the entire show ever. But I am not alone, even though I could probably do that. With me, as always... Well, you know what I mean? I just fucking love it. I can just sit there and talk for 3 hours about it. But I'm not joined by just one person. I'm joined by two. First up is Kurt North, my co-host. Hello, Kurt.
Hello.
And regular co-host slash guest host slash Bauble Bellend, the last time I saw him, it's Colin.
Hello.
Right, Colin. So after this, just so you're aware, and I had this conversation with Mark, and I've had this conversation with Carl, we need to have a sit down in my office, and we need to have a long discussion about the Christmas special. Okay, and I've got some serious stuff to talk to you about. Okay,
That's fair.
all right. Okay.
Are you going to sit and have a word with Hob as well?
Well, Hob's been difficult to find, so he's gone underground as Hob. So.
Good. Really, we should be telling off Matt because he slept through most of
He
it.
did. He could have stopped Hob. Hob was in his house.
Matt's discipline is going to be slightly different. It's going to be more based on his actual work ethic rather more than anything
But I mean, this is always going to be chaotic, and it was mostly going to be me going "Yay!" if you two didn't stop me. But we are talking about Gunmen of the Apocalypse, which won an international Emmy in 1994 for popular arts. It is, as far as I know, the only Emmy-winning episode of Red Dwarf. But it didn't just win that. I think it was actually the series as a whole, but it also won Best BBC Sitcom at the British Comedy Awards as well.
Did you see that on YouTube? I looked for the Emmy to see if they actually went to accept it, and found that Comedy Awards acceptance.
Oh, cool.
It's actually on YouTube. It's 1 minute 20. Rob Grant gets up and says a couple of things, and that's about it. Nothing special.
Is it worth watching?
Wait, it's not worth doing a special.
I was going to say, Mark, I want to do a special on it in a minute.
For fuck's sake. I mean, I like doing a special.
Gapper the Triphibian Monster. The AA adverts.
It was that on special
great
that I can't quite remember what happened in it. It's 1 minute 21. I think Jonathan Ross is hosting, or he's like given the award, I think. And the cast get up: Rob Grant, Doug Naylor, and Craig Charles. And yeah, one thing I did pick up on it though, actually when they come up, they mention Chris Barry, they mention Danny John Jules, and they mention Robert Llewellyn, and don't mention Craig Charles.
Savage.
Oh. 1995, that might have been when there was the court case, which he was totally acquitted for. But that may have been the reason why.
Maybe.
Oh, shit. That's so sad.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. But yeah, it was broadcast on the 21st of October 1993, and it's fucking brilliant. It's the best one, and I love it.
It's good, isn't it?
It is good. I actually had the T-shirt of this with all four of them in their outfits on the horses, which I think was actually a promo photo because there isn't a scene where all four of them are on horses, are there?
There isn't, no.
So it was taken from a promo photo, the T-shirt that I had, and God, I wore that to death. It ended up with more hole than T-shirt by the time I threw it away. You're going to have to rein me in because I'm just going to be like, oh, it did good, dude. I can't be unbiased on it. I just can't.
I don't think any of us are going to be arguing with you that it's a brilliant episode. It's fucking fantastic.
I did look it up, though, and it isn't actually regarded in a number of votes on Red Dwarf favourite episodes by critics and or viewers that it isn't their favourite. It's like 6th out of...
Yeah, but it's top 10. You know.
Still, as far as I'm concerned, it's irrefutable and unbeatable. But
I would agree with the critics personally.
Right, okay. What's your favourite episode then, Kurt?
Probably Back to Reality.
That's pretty close for me, I'll be honest. Colin?
See, previously, I think I've said either Back to Reality or Polymorph. But watching season 6, or series 6, because we're not American.
I kept doing that last week. I
do all the time.
Interchanging all of them.
Watching series 6 this last week, it's so funny. It's I don't know if you talked about it in the previous episodes, but the rate of jokes is just so much higher. And they were fucking high on the previous episodes.
It's relentless.
But it's, I believe that they got the idea while they were in America doing Red Dwarf USA, because Rob Grant and Doug Naylor were watching Cheers, which had absolutely loads of jokes in each scene, and decided that they were going to have a higher quantity of jokes. And it worked really, really well.
I think what I said in the last episode, Colin, was it seems that there's a lot more, and it happens going into Red Dwarf 10 as well in later series. So I think maybe a Doug Naylor influence is that the jokes are interspersed. So you'll have like the writing, they'll start off a joke, then they'll move to something else, and then the payoff is like later on. So there's those little bits of writing that they've done where it's like, oh, right, we'll hold that.
Callbacks and stuff like, which is great.
Yeah. I think for me, the big tester when I'm watching comedy on my own, it has to be fucking good for me to actually laugh out loud, because I think there is a shared experience in comedy. And I was howling. The cat was confused. Series 6 is
He always is. It's part of his character.
No, I meant my cat. Her name's Passion, she's beautiful and I love her, but she does get in the way when I'm podcasting.
You may have mentioned that nearly as many times as the amount of times that you've mentioned that you like Gunmen of the Apocalypse.
I mean, I like her as much, if not more, than Gunmen of the Apocalypse. She's got a nice face. Moving on. I feel like this kind of predicts what we're experiencing now with virtual reality type stuff. Obviously, there's not the sex elements, but there was nothing like the technology in 1993, but there kind of is now. Have either of you actually had a proper go at virtual reality?
Not of the new stuff, but when this came out, it was in like the first wave of virtual reality.
Kind of Star Wing style graphics, wasn't it?
Sort of, yeah, like vector graphics. There was, virtual reality in the early 90s was massive, and it was expected that it was going to be the future of video games. And it was, in 1992, Computer Gaming World magazine had done a big report on it and said that they expected there to be affordable VR by 1994. Which didn't happen. There were a load of problems. I seem to remember at the time that they had various issues with aligning the screens. So people were getting, feeling sick and getting headaches while they were using them. And because they couldn't quite get over that and the expense of the things, it never quite took off. And then obviously within the last maybe 10 years or so, with stuff like the Oculus Rift, there's been a massive resurgence in it. But no, I haven't had a go yet.
No, I haven't. I did have a go on the Starwing graphic stuff at the Games Master convention in 1990, whatever the fuck, early. And it was utterly bizarre. You shot your gun and the bullet was really slow. I felt like I could outrun the bullet.
There was
and that's the only real memory I have of it. And it was in that giant frame thing with the proper kind of helmet that you see as the image of the 90s VR. And I queued for 2 hours for 5 minutes, and it was cack.
There's a episode of the Under Consultation podcast about that Games Master convention at the NEC.
NEC, that's right.
Yeah, Games Master Live. So that's worth listening to. But yeah, I had a go on the old style VR, but recently. It was like about six years ago. It was at the there's a Museum of Computing in Cambridge, which is really good.
You know what? We were supposed to have it, probably something like that. We were supposed to have something like that at my work around about the time of, I think it was the summer of 2020.
What happened
then?
Yeah, I wonder why they pulled out in around February, March time.
The year of 1 million podcasts starting.
I was really looking forward to it as well, because it was all like SNES and Nintendos and Ataris and Commodores and all kinds. Street Fighters and Nitro Arcades, Sega Rally. It had loads of stuff that we were going to do, but obviously, had to scale back. And then eventually we realised it was going to be a case of no, we're not even going to get to do it to run it. We'll have to look at some paintings instead, just because it was safe. So
hopefully in the future.
Yeah. Hopefully.
But I would love to have a go at modern VR. I've watched some like YouTube videos of people playing it, and there's VR of fucking everything. There's like VR of Rick and Morty and various other things, and the Star Trek one as well. And I'm like, this is mainstream, and I've just not done it ever.
I've got the VR Star Trek Bridge game, which was the modern one for the Chris Pine stuff, but they have done like add-on packs for Next Generation and stuff, but I've not actually got the headset, so they've altered it for just for general playing.
Oh, so
I bought it because it was like at the time it was like a $5. So if I ever get one, then it's going to be there ready once I have a go with it.
Yeah,
but, I think we're on the cusp really, because obviously past 6-7 years has been like the Viva and all that type of thing, which have all been £1,000 full gaming rig setups and stuff like that. But obviously with the whole Oculus stuff now being hand literally don't need a laptop, don't need a PC. You just stick it on your head and away you go. I think it's getting to the point now where it's going to be, next 2 or 3 years it'll start to get everywhere. And then you never know, by the end of this podcast, we might be doing a podcast in VR.
Or it might all crash again like it did in the early 90s.
Yeah.
Just imagine looking to my left and seeing Mark and just waving at him. That's how we'll watch. That's how we will watch Red Dwarf 10 Trojan. If we get there in time.
And before we actually get into the full discussion of the episode, I think, once again, Kurt, if you want to take the lead on the stuff about the horrible fire and shit.
Yeah, so the Laredo Western Town, as we've mentioned in the previous 2 episodes, I'm just going to have a look at their FundMe page at the moment, actually, just to see at time of recording where they're up to. They're trying to raise £25,000 to rebuild the set, which is obviously what we're going to talk about today in this episode.
It's what we're going to gush about today.
I'm going to gush about, yes. So they have been. If you have a chance to go onto the Facebook, look for Laredo Western Town, and you'll find their Facebook page, in which they're producing pictures of the rebuild that they've had to do due to the unfortunate fire at the end of November. It was founded in 1971, right? And it was an enthusiast called John Truder. And many of his friends around rode horses. It's a private land. It's not available to open to the public. And obviously, Gunmen the Apocalypse was allowed to film there. So with the fire, it's obviously a big rebuild project. Their aim is to raise £25,000, and at time of recording, they've raised $15,630. So we reached out to them and said that we want to do something for them. So we may do an extra special episode at some point in the future. But for these 6 episodes, we are going to just mention it and put it into our notes. So if anyone has any spare cash around that can help towards the cause, then we would strongly ask if you could please help him in any way that you can. So yeah, please do that.
And a lot of podcasts do have a Patreon, or they do have a Ko-fi website. We've never done that. Obviously, our network does, but as a podcast on its own, we've never done that. So perhaps if you're ever going to think about chucking us a few quid on Ko-fi, just chuck it their way instead, please.
Yeah. Also, discovered yesterday that Elbow's Ground for Divorce video was filmed there as well, which I'd seen a few times.
I absolutely adore that tune.
Yeah, it's a brilliant song. But yeah, the saloon that they're playing in is the same one in Gunmen of the Apocalypse. We're going to have problems today with me pronouncing apocalypse, because I've said apocalypse at least 3 times already.
Right, shall we talk about Gunmen of the Apocalypse?
I think we probably should.
All right. The show starts with Lister as a private detective, and he approaches a femme fatale and tells her he's worked out all of her crimes. She asks not to be turned in, and they kiss when he says he's not going to. And I've deliberately tried to write my notes as unemotionally as possible. That really doesn't give you the feel of how this is, does it? It's just so beautifully done. It's all kind of black and white and... With a blue tint
to it.
And it's just so beautifully noir and stylized. And even though this wasn't filmed at Laredo, I even feel like the background here is really well thought out for just like a tiny little scene, really. And it's just fucking great. Oh, I can't. But I'm not wrong, though, am I? One of you two say something about it.
So the femme fatale, as you've mentioned, is Loretta, which Lister describes as the sexiest computer sprite he's ever seen. Played by Karen Hansen. Played by Jennifer Calvert.
Correct.
Who played Karen Hansen in the kids' sitcom set in a burger bar, Spats, that was on children's ITV, which was fucking terrible.
I loved it as a kid.
I rewatched an episode of it the other day, and it will be horrible. So bad.
So I have a podcast about kids' telly, and I have never watched Spats.
You're not missing much,
I know,
mate.
right? It was kind of our generation as well, like late 30s, early 40s, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was.
No, it was in the 90s, Mark.
His first episode was 1990.
It wasn't in the 30s or 40s.
I meant age-wise, not the... Fuck off.
So you'd have been 12 when it started, Mark. I was
so exactly the right age to watch it, and I didn't. That's bizarre. Yeah. That's not.
Having said that, I was 10. So 1990 it started, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was 10. So it's probably we probably just tilted on that edge, that knife edge, where I would have watched it because I was 10.
Yeah. And it's. I suppose. I looked up some other episodes. I just had a look at it on IMDb. Danny John Jules is in an episode.
Right, good.
As some kind of superhero. And Chloe Annette is also in one. So we've got 2 Red Dwarf cast members, although one that we've not got to yet.
And Jennifer Calvert went on to be on Stargate.
Yes,
as well.
Yes.
So we then immediately cut to Lister on a VR machine, French kissing the air. Crichton walks in and asks him to follow him, but obviously he's oblivious because he's immersed in the game. And I think I love that, even though Crichton obviously should know, but it's almost like a parent walking in on a video game, isn't it? I like that scene, even though it doesn't actually really fit Crichton, because Crichton's brighter than that and is a robot himself. But still, it's still perfect, because I've done that to my dad.
Yeah, and it still happens now.
Yeah.
Now I am the new generation of, I am the dad going, do what you're doing, and she just pays no attention because you're playing on a Kindle.
Yeah.
What I do find interesting with this episode, or these scenes, is the the next 2 episodes especially, just the amount of smeg ups there is. And again, I mentioned this a couple of weeks back. I just remember these episodes from smeg ups, and I just can't. I'm so brainwashed to think of what did actually happen rather than what's actually in the show, which is strange.
Yeah. This is the one where he gets himself in the dick with a wire, isn't it?
He tries to walk off, and he's got the
there's
grommel
that.
attachment attached still.
There's that, but there's also like the bit where he goes, "What do we do now, Dad?"
Yep.
Because his hat falls off when he's kissing her. And again, we wouldn't be amiss for us to allude to the fact that Craig Charles gets the girl again.
Yep.
You know, but there is consequences in the next episode. There's always consequences to Craig Charles getting the girl in this series, and I think it's wonderful.
And I think we also have to shout out the utterly wonderful commitment level to the French kiss that we see from Craig Charles. It's magnificent.
Particularly the one where there's no one actually there, and it's the
exactly. And for me, I'm like, having seen that, I don't want to kiss Craig Charles. That would not be a good kiss. But the
Would you rather kiss a siren?
I mean, unfortunately, I'm not pansexual, so no, it's just men for me, like human men for me. But you know, some people out there might, you know.
Depends who the siren looks like. Obviously, you wouldn't know it was a siren.
That's true.
Until
it
it
looked
sucked
like
out your
Orlando Bloom,
brains.
I'm done.
Unless it's got a straw in its hand, then
Yes.
you might have an idea.
Orlando Bloom could have anything in his hand if he wanted to give me a kiss. I'd say yes, please.
Orlando Bloom is getting a lot of coverage on this series.
Look at his face; he's beautiful. Oh, you've distracted me with Orlando. Oh, I distracted
You
with
mentioned him.
Orlando. I know. Right, so we go back to the game, and Lister starts talking all meta about how she is an attractive computer sprite and stuff like that. And
That opens up a question for me, actually. The fact that she recognizes herself as a psychopathic, schizophrenic femme fatale.
Yep.
And that she knows who she is in the game. Like obviously, that's a Star Trek trope would normally be that the holograms just play the characters that they are, and you can almost imagine like the GTA thing of when they're just like when they're not in mode, they're just hovering, and doing that thing that loads of people do on YouTube now, where they actually pretend to be GTA characters. But
that's
but
what I was
needs
actually going to mention, the GTA thing, because this is way before GTA, and it's actually quite clever because he ignores the plot of the game and essentially goes and fucks hookers and then kills them to get his money back. Which
I
is
didn't
what
think of it in
everyone
that
does
context,
in GTA.
but you're right.
But they have done this years and years and years before GTA.
I don't think there were. I don't remember there being any games at that point where you could just go off and do your own thing. Particularly, it was all way more linear. So that's pretty prescient.
Predicting the future by Lister shagging sprites and telling them they're in a game.
You see, here's me again trying to be. I am the central hub of this system. Just being all like, okay, so the fact that she might have sentience, she's aware of herself, blah blah blah, and we're talking about GTA and hookers.
I didn't write the plot. I just interpreted the plot. Also, anybody who tells me that they've played GTA and they haven't gone and done it with a hooker and then killed her to get the money back is lying. Lying.
That's fair. Yeah, I think everyone has done that.
And anybody who says, "Oh no, I didn't see if I could steal the tank," lie. Of course you stole the tank.
That's what it's there for.
And anyone who says,
I've literally just stole the tank. I literally have just stole the tank. I've never played Vice City. So this is the first time that I've played Vice City, and the mission came up literally like 2 days ago. I had to steal the tank. So
Oh, yeah, but you did the mission to steal the tank. You didn't just turn up and steal the tank like everyone else did.
no, I wasn't aware of the tank. So I'm going into it blind. But anyway, this is not the GTA podcast.
It is not. But I really, again, I love how this predicts the future. It is science fiction as much as it's comedy. We've talked about how tight the gags are, but this is a prediction of something that happened not very much later, almost perfectly. And
Talk about predicting the future as well. I mean, are you telling me that James Cameron didn't see this and then fitted it into Titanic?
Yes. Yes, I am. Crichton enters the game as Sammy the Squib, and by the time he gets there, Lister is shagging Loretta in a car. Crichton knocks on the window and reports that the results of the chemical scan are in, and they're in a rogue simulant zone.
Yes.
And Loretta flirts with Sammy the Squib.
Crichton has an excellent moustache as Sammy the Squib.
That is also in my notes. Nice tash.
Looks ace.
It does. It does. Again, the character switching immediately back to the game mode is fucking perfect because it goes back to the central plot that he should be following. It's just so well thought, and it's a real awareness of video games as well. Almost an awareness of video games before they got that sophisticated as well.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Crichton needs him to turn off the console immediately, and Lister's not best pleased.
No, he offers to, another 5 minutes because he'll keep his hat on.
Yeah. I was desperately looking for my notes, looking to see what he actually said. I was like, it's 5 minutes something. I can't remember. The notes have gone.
He says 10 minutes, and then Crichton says, no, we can't do that. And it's like, 5 minutes. I'll keep my hat on.
I wonder actually, just thinking about that, I wonder if that is because of the smeg up.
It's possible.
And it might have been that they actually... Maybe it wasn't written in the script originally, and it just happened. It was like, right, we're going to use that.
Possible.
Possibly.
I don't think I've ever worn a hat whilst having sex. I've
don't
worn a
think I-
mask. Moving on. I have, though. I've lost what I was going to say. I was going to ask, though, obviously, in modern VR, you get gloves and boots and the mask and stuff. But I'm assuming here that you don't... I mean, how would sex work in VR? I mean, you would get a hard-on outside the game, but surely there isn't the level of equipment to...
I would imagine, as technology progresses, people usually find ways to
I think
fuck
there
it.
is. I've got this vague recollection that there's something. It's not virtual reality. It's the sensation or physically operating a machine from the other side of the world.
Haptic feedback.
What's haptic feedback? That sounds
No,
fascinating.
I know what Colin's talking about. I was talking about something a little more sophisticated than the lush. But
No, haptic feedback is when you touch your phone and you can feel it like pressing buttons, even though it's not. It like vibrates a bit, so
Right. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
haptic feedback. So it's
Okay.
like levels of vibration to make. Anyway,
so at the moment, there's plenty of places you can go, Mark. You can go and you can pay some money, some tokens to people, and that haptic feedback happens, and they get paid for it on your dick in whatever region you like.
So I'm just thinking about the cleanliness factor of this VR system that Lister's fucking.
At the moment, the Oculus Rift doesn't have anything below the waist at all. It's a floating body.
Right. So, but no, I kind of like the idea of VR sex as something that people could have. I think I'd probably give it a go once and probably not enjoy it very much and then move on. Cat and Rimmer are in the cockpit. Rimmer tells Cat to stay alert with his nose because the long range scanners are down. And there's a line here, I'll keep my nose peeled. That's really quite yuck. I was like, ugh? Who peels their nose?
but his parallel universe counterpart
sunburn.
would have been even better.
That's true. We've all experienced our nose peeling thinking about it. And why would he want to do that? I mean, they are bored. This one is something that's come up like 2 or 3 times already in the series, and I did a little bit of research because I thought that a decent sense of smell was more of a dog thing. And I've looked it up. In people, there are about 6 million odour sensors in your nose. In cats, there's 200 million odour sensors in their nose. And in dogs, it's 300 million. So cats are very close to the level of sniffiness that dogs have. And they're both streets ahead of people. So there you go. Yes, that's exactly what I thought. I mean, he'd have... Right, dogs smell really bad. Or some dogs do. And that dog certainly did. You'd think if they got really sensitive noses, they wouldn't want to stink. Dogs are weird. Cats are better.
I think it might be like if you've got a smell that's around you the entire time, you go nose blind to it, don't you? So they probably do that.
True.
It smells like dogs here. That's because I am a dog. Woof.
So I want you both to have a guess at this. What is the animal that has the best sense of smell in all of the world to scientific knowledge?
Elephant, because it could fit loads in its trunk.
What about you, Curtis? What's your guess?
That's probably bollocks.
Well, I'll go with my initial thing, even though I don't think it is. Aardvark.
We've both gone for things with long noses.
So one of you is right. Do either of you want to change your opinion?
It's going to be the aardvark. It's not going to be the fucking elephant, is it?
What do we think? What are you going to... Between you need to pick one.
I know, it's like that...
we need to pick one nose.
Thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Which nose are we going to pick?
I'm just going to stick with my answer. I'm just going to stick with aardvark.
I'll go with that.
It is the elephant.
No way! I was being fucking stupid.
It is the elephant that has the most sensitive smell in the world, or at least that we know of currently.
Also,
there might be a fish underwater, like a million miles underwater.
Also, it can remember all of the things that it smells.
But yeah, that was my interesting fact of the day. Lister heads back, and Rimmer points out that he only uses the VR thing for sex. Lister says that's not true because he uses the sports simulators.
90s ick.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, we were talking about Craig Charles's flexibility.
Oh, the 0G kickboxing, where he does a good kick.
It's a very high kick. Very high kick. And also as well, talking about smeg ups. So within this, you've got, as I say, the ones I've already mentioned. So the hat, the groinal socket. You've got the stay alert when he's knocking the cat and cat doesn't do anything in a smeg out. And then you've got the pa pussy with Chris Barry. So again, and then soon you got the Vindalovian Empire stuff as well, which is all outtakes. So it literally is just littered full of them. So I just want to get that out of the system first, and then we can talk about the jailbait.
Yeah, I wasn't 100% sure on the meaning of jailbait. It is a term that just doesn't really get used anymore, so I did have to look that up. Technically, the ball girl isn't jailbait in Britain because she's 17. Jailbait basically means a Lolita figure, someone who is underage but still attractive. And it isn't handled in the way I would have liked, but at least Lister isn't a paedophile.
This is a good sign, yeah.
Should
we move on?
Yeah, the joke's tasteless, but it could have been a fuck-ton worse. And obviously, we're just going to briefly mention it, that this gag would not be in a modern episode of Red Dwarf.
No.
Yeah. Lister explains what simulants are, which...
They already know.
Which was odd, but obviously we don't already know. And we've already talked about this, Colin, with Carl, about how we felt like Series 6 was a little bit of a soft reboot. In as much as it was a new scenario and they established the characters in Sirens in the first few scenes. By having Lister lose his memory, it allowed them that option.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably why they did it. I wouldn't call them out and say, oh, they knew what simulants were, because I think I know the reason why.
Yeah, it's exposition for the people watching that haven't, watched earlier ones, which is absolutely fair.
Yeah, and I think also, just while I'm thinking about it as well, there's the... We've mentioned about continuation. Now, it's very, very loose continuation, but this one, they actually found the AR machine in the derelict of all the ships.
Yeah.
And they've mentioned as in Sirens, when they had the graveyard of like the Vorcha Klingon ships and all kinds, and the Space 1999 ship and stuff like that. So the fact that they are still continuing within this, they're in this realm of space that they're actually in, is actually full of these simulants and gelfs and all kinds.
Yeah. And the continuity that they've got in this series that they didn't have in any of the previous ones. I kind of wonder if they've done that obviously they've done it deliberately, but I wonder if part of the reason that they did that is because in a lot of the earlier series, you get an episode that we talked about where, this was supposed to be the second episode and it got shunted along to the fifth and stuff like that. Obviously, with having more of control of, with having more continuity in it, the BBC can't do that.
Yeah, well, I think also as well, you wouldn't have heard, but they were saying that when Series 5 ended, that they wanted Series 6 out by March.
Yeah.
And it was like a rush to the thing. So with them writing everything so compactly, as quickly as they physically can, and then ironically, BBC turned them and going, actually, we will show it in autumn.
Yeah.
So, so the fact that they were both in that house together. Yeah. They were in that house together writing, so, they were literally in each other's pockets for 6 episodes, so you can see why the continuation kind of feeds in, because they're just writing all in one go.
And it's fascinating that worked for Series 6 and brought us, in my opinion, the best series that I've at least seen, but it also could have contributed to them not wanting to write with each other anymore.
Yeah. Got burnt out over it.
Yeah. Rimmer suggests that they abandoned pursuit of Red Dwarf because it's too dangerous, but they've already been spotted and a simulant ship is approaching.
Is this the first time we've seen a simulant ship?
The simulant
I think
in
maybe.
Justice, how did he
Yes,
arrive?
but there's simulants previously, but we've had them being like in escape pods and things like that. I don't think we've seen a ship before.
Yeah,
and
we haven't.
It looks badass.
Oh, it's magnificent.
It's a very cool ship.
And it's like the Holoship ship. They're using it for one episode, maybe a minute of screen time, and it's just fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah. And they didn't remake Red Dwarf because they blew it up.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of sad that they blew this up and we never got to see that again as well. Spoilers. I don't think spoilers on a show that's nearly 20 years old, 30 years old.
I was going to say nearly 20 years old.
Yeah, nearly 30
So from
years
2002, is it?
You might see some new ships in the future.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe.
And Rimmer wants to surrender, but Crichton's advice is that's a really bad idea because they'll just execute you on the spot. And that it's basically because they fucking hate people. They get a communication asking for their species and purpose, and Lister has an idea. Did either of you recognise the simulant captain?
Yes. Dennis Lill.
Yeah, his name's Dennis Lill, and for years I was like, who the fuck is that? Who the fuck is that? And then, the internet came along, and he was the guy from Survivors, which I was probably a little bit too young to watch, but he was one of the main characters in the original 70s Survivors TV series.
Okay.
I liked. Where did you see him?
That's not what I know him from.
Go on.
What I know him from is he plays Bob Kane in Tim Burton's 1989 Batman.
Oh, right,
so
okay.
there's the bit in the newspaper office where the cartoonist comes along and he's drawn basically Man-Bat. So it's a bat face with a guy in a suit.
Right.
And that was originally supposed to be actually played by Bob Kane.
Right.
And Bob Kane couldn't make it, so Dennis Lill played that part, but the character was still called Bob Kane.
Fascinating.
That was him.
Good grief. But yeah, mine is definitely a deep cut, but I actually rewatched Survivors on DVD about 10 years ago now, and damn, it's slow. I still quite like it, but along the lines of stuff like the tripods as well, the pacing of 70s and 80s stuff is really, really slow, and I never spotted that as a kid. Whereas this, and indeed the stuff from the 80s for Red Dwarf, the pacing's always been pretty pacey.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Red Dwarf is pacey as fuck in parts. But yeah, the amazing Vindaloovian scene.
They transmit their chins upside down, and they've got Crichton's eyes on them, pretending to be Bindi Baji and Tarkadal the Vindalooians. And they hate humans too, apparently.
One of my favourite Red Dwarf moments, memories, is the tongue when he sticks it out.
Yep.
It's imprinted in my brain, that. And of course, obviously the smeg up as well, but the tongue, we exterminate them all.
I think that was just Danny John Jules taking the piss, and they were like, that's funny, let's keep that.
Yeah.
I would assume he was thinking, well, I've done my line.
Craig Charles, wasn't it? It's Craig Charles that did it. I know
Oh, it was Craig Charles, yes, sorry.
Yeah.
But regardless, taking the piss, because he would have thought they would have cut, and that was just to poke his tongue out at the cameraman.
Yeah.
And it works so well. And again, the scum thing that you mentioned, Colin, funnily enough, that is one of the, I think there's 5 or 6 quotable Red Dwarf in this episode for me, but that is one of the ones that, if I'm mock disliking someone, scum. And yeah, I also researched the dishes. Tarkadal is lentils with garlic, onion, and chili.
Yep.
Bindi Bhaji is a kind of an okra version of an onion bhaji, and they both sound well good.
I've had Tarkadal quite a few times.
I think I've had Tarkadal as well, but
it's-
I've not had Bindi Bhaji. I want some though.
Do you think of Red Dwarf when you have it?
Absolutely right.
Obviously. You have to eat it upside down.
Yes. But I like that they actually seem to give a shit about the curry references. And,
Yeah.
that they could have just called him something a bit more obvious, like, I don't know, tikka and korma. But they didn't. They went a bit deeper and found these proper traditional Indian veggie things. For
Lister
no good
knows
reason, really.
Lister knows his curries.
Exactly, and I like that. It's the thought that's gone into it. Did I mention I like this episode?
You may have done
I
once or
think you may
twice.
have.
I also really like curry.
We've not mentioned the other simulant. Liz Hickling is the actress that plays the female simulant. She, spoilers, turns up again in a couple of episodes' time, and she was also in Bugs, which I vaguely remember as being quite cool at the time.
Craig McLaughlin.
And she was in Zorro and Press Gang as well. There's a lot of people that have been in Press Gang that turn up in other stuff later on. Not as much as when you're looking through lists of, what's that person been in? If they're British, every single one of the fuckers has been in Casualty and The Bill.
True. The simulant beams aboard as their scanners showed human life, and he discovers the attempted ruse, and he is disappointed. Rimmer surrenders and demands prisoner of war rights, and that's non-violent constraints. The simulant calls them primitive and shoots them all.
We've missed the fact that he does quote the All Nations Agreement to Prisoner of Wars.
Yes.
He misquotes it, though,
He
doesn't
does.
he?
It's another Space Corps directive kind of gag, isn't it? And
Yeah. I like the fact it's another, book, though. The fact it's not just a Space Corps
and
directive.
he's got that wrong, too. It's brilliant.
Well, it's CSER, and what I particularly like about this one as well is, Rimmer is absolutely right in this situation. He's like, look, it's embarrassing more than anything, but, we're facing simulants right at this moment in time. Can you not just let me have this one? We're in mortal danger.
But from Crichton's point of view, it might be the last chance he ever gets to do it, so fuck no.
No, that's true. That's true. But, talking about Crichton, the visual gag when he gets his eyes back, I nearly had to pause while I was sat on I disturbed the cat.
It's like a double take sort of thing, isn't it? It's great.
It's a quadruple take, Colin. It's magnificent. Yeah. I've seen it how many times and I still laughed like a drain.
Not to bang on about the Smeg-Ups, but it's when the eye gets dropped and he's looking around.
Does it one eye?
It does it one eye. It's looking around.
I think anyone who was a fan of Red Dwarf around this time will probably remember the Smeg-Ups almost as much as the videos.
I used to watch Smeg-Ups probably more often than the proper series.
I think for me,
Same here.
Series 6, Series 5, Smeg Ups, then the rest was probably what I watched. And, right, where did I have the space for all these Red Dwarf videos? I had them all. I haven't got space for fuck all in my pokey flat now. Glad we don't still have videos. I just, looking around, I wouldn't be able to have a cat. And that's not happening. Got a cat. I've got a cat. Really like Gunmen of the Apocalypse stuff. Crew.
There's just one more for the Full House, and we'll get.
What's the Full House? Is it Orlando Bloom?
It's
Well,
related.
It's related to that, yeah.
Okay. So the crew wake up after 3 weeks, and the simulants have upgraded everything, and they've even included some laser cannons. The simulant says over the comms that there'll now be a challenge, and they have 2 minutes to flee. Kat suggests immediate attack rather than running, and Lister and Crichton think it's a great idea, and they go for it. And, I use this all the time. What happens if we all get killed? I'll never hear the last of it. I use that so much. Whenever someone agrees with my shit, I'm like, but what happens if we all get killed? I'll never hear the last of it. I don't tend to do a cat impression anymore because I'm not 100% sure whether mimicking someone's voice is okay anymore, but I still fucking quote it.
Mimicking
A cat.
an accent, though.
Yeah. Yeah. But the joke's still
Accentception.
funny, even in my weird-ass Black Country / Mancunian / slightly overpronounced accent.
I've been listening to a podcast recently, just while we're talking about this, right? And what's really been bugging me is he says bus, and he says buzz.
Yep.
That's frustrating. I got a buzz the other day.
I don't say buzz. Do I say buzz or do I say bus? I think I say bus.
You probably say bus.
Buzz is more of a Birmingham thing than a Black Country.
Yeah, so Matt
Right,
probably
is it?
does it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Possibly. Matt's although Matt is from Walsall originally, I think, which is Black Country rather than Birmingham.
We'll see. We'll get him to say bus next week. See, is there any way we can get him to say bus next
Is there a
week?
bus in any of the episodes? No. But the attack succeeds with a fluke hit, and as a last vindictive act, the simulant transmits the Armageddon virus to Starbug, and then the sim ship, as we mentioned, explodes beautifully. Ah,
Brilliant model work.
I've always been a fan of really tat kind of action films where everything's made of explodium. And I just love this momentary, beautiful model being blasted the fuck up. I don't care that things are made of explodium. It's a film thing, but it's just a beautiful explodium ship, isn't it?
It is. And it's very Thunderbirdsy.
No, it's so much better than Thunderbirds.
No, Thunderbirds, the model work was great as well.
It was for the time, but this is better.
Yeah. Oh, this is better, but
Until it's not better, and we're fast approaching when it's not better.
Well, we're not going to be criticising anything about this episode, Kurt. Whether we've had this discussion.
No, I'm just saying for later series.
Right. You can
not
criticise the fuck out of anything other than this episode. Maybe not Back to Reality.
When they decide to not use models, becomes a bit of an issue.
Yeah.
The virus locks them on a path into a sun in 38 minutes. Crichton wants to contract the virus, create a Dove program, and cure it from inside.
2 things. One, a slight criticism, and one, another smeg up. The smeg up when he says, "Do I have your permission to poo myself, sir?" That one. But do you not think there's a really weird cut in this? Because it kind of like goes to Rimmer, and they start talking about this 38 minutes thing, and the tension gets bracketed up, and the music starts to build, and then they turn to Crichton, and Crichton starts talking, and the music just suddenly drops. And it's like, oh, right. And then Crichton starts to talk. And then even like the next scene, so say there's still 23 minutes left. Now, I know obviously why, but it seems weird that they racket the tension up so much, so quickly, and then all of a sudden, in the same scene, just drops, and it just Crichton talking without any music at all. It kind of plays on me a little bit. It's like, why did they make that choice? Why is that cut?
It's not something that immediately resonated with me, but now you've mentioned it.
Yeah, I didn't notice it at all.
You're the music guy as well, Colin.
I was making notes about jokes in Red Dwarf at that point.
True, there's a lot of fucking jokes. But no, I'll inevitably watch it again, and I'll keep my eye out for that. It didn't have that effect on me, Kurt, but I can see why it would from what you've described.
Yeah, it just seems to suddenly drop. It's like mid-sentence as well. So Rimmer's talking. He's saying, we've only got 38 minutes or something. And then Crichton turns around and says, I've got an idea for this antidote. And right at that moment, the music just suddenly stops.
How peculiar.
And it's like, it's a bit jarring.
Huh.
Sorry.
The virus is complicated, and so he shuts down all his essential systems. And when Lister asks how they can help, he says, watch my dreams. And shout out to the fucking special effects when he puts the stuff on his head that transmits the virus into him.
Yeah.
That would be fine in modern shit, and it's 30 years old.
Yeah, it looks cool.
Yeah. It's
looks
really
very metal.
cool. Yeah, like kind of almost... and like cyberpunky.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's just the right era for cyberpunk as well.
Mm.
Early 90s.
And I always also wondered whether Watch My Dreams was a reference back to how they've all watched each other's dreams in the past with...
in the Dream Recorder,
Yeah.
So I think, even though it's a soft reboot, they're leaving us these little Easter eggs for long-term fans as well. Or maybe I'm reading too much into it, like most people read too much into Shakespeare.
It's better than Shakespeare.
Oh, shut up.
It's definitely funnier.
I know some really funny, tragic moments that happen in
There's
Shakespeare.
some funny shit in Shakespeare. I quite like Shakespeare. Moving on. Crichton is getting weaker, and Rimmer starts a discussion about who takes the only escape pod. Unfortunately, Lister accidentally set it off on the previous Thursday.
It escaped.
Yes, that line is great. It escaped last Thursday. And it's just, yeah. And it's also a nice, quick way to get rid of that as a thing as well. And it stops wanky fans going, yeah, what about you escape here?
But also on top of that, you've got the classic Rimmer stuff of like, well, I've taken age and rank and seniority and usefulness into a thing, and I've decided it's me.
Yeah.
So again, it's just building up that kind of thing of like, oh, Rimmer's going to run away, and then delivering the cutthroat line. Well, you can't.
Crichton's dream comes up on the screen, and he's a drunk sheriff in a western. It's how his program has basically converted his battle with the virus into a dream. Crichton enters the saloon for some more booze and is humiliated by a young man called Jimmy. The Apocalypse Boys arrive.
Here's a question for you. The Red Dwarf music is playing on piano. That makes that this music, written music, is canon inside that universe.
And I think that it's the first time this ever happens. I was trying to think whether it appeared in any like background party sort of scenes in an early bit, but I don't think it did. But yeah, played on like honky tonk barroom piano.
We've already heard brilliant versions of the theme already. Unfortunately, by the horrible Elvis impersonator guy was one of them. But this, I think, is just so perfect. It really does get the scene, just makes the scene better, and it just makes it feel thematic, but it's just a cheeky little nod, lol, look what we did. It's just great. I love that happened as a thing. It didn't have to. It could have been any kind of plinky plonky saloon music, but it's just brilliant.
Bad guys coming in, minor key.
Let's flatten that third. So, just while we're here at Laredo, Western Town. The idea for this episode came about because they thought it was a brilliant idea. They didn't have a script or anything, but told the crew that they had a script for a Western and sent them off on a journey to find some way of doing a Western episode. So they didn't even write a script until that, but they actually told the crew they did actually have it. So when they came back with Laredo, they went, "Oh, we'll write a script then."
So how long had Laredo been going at this point? Was it relatively new then and not really well heard of?
I'm not sure.
Well, it's not very well heard of anyway, because
1971 it was founded.
Yeah,
so it's been there for a while.
But it's a private thing, isn't
Yeah.
it? So with it not being open to the public, and particularly not having the internet at that time, they wouldn't necessarily have known about it. There is quite a cool little mini documentary that Robert Llewellyn went back to Laredo in 2004, and I think it was for the Series 6 DVD extras, but it's on YouTube, and it's got him talking to some of the guys that have got the buildings there, and they're talking about how, you know, half of them just like they'll stay overnight just sleeping in the buildings and then just working on, you know, building new bits and stuff like that.
So you can actually live in there.
The people that own, basically, from what I understand, the little buildings are all owned by different people. So you've got a guy in there who owns like the blacksmiths, and he does the blacksmithy type stuff in there, and he lives in that building. They've got a hotel in there where they occasionally had weddings and stuff like that.
Yeah, so John Truder basically said that he had a number of different friends. He was riding horses when he was a young boy, and decided that he wanted to form this kind of thing with his friends, kind of thing. So it was more like, we want to do it for ourselves more than anything else. And it was only when, you know, it's like 40 miles outside of Kent or something. I might be completely wrong with that. I don't know where I've got Kent in my head.
It's in Kent.
Be. Yeah. Okay. So it was the beginning of that. And, you know, even to the point where, you know, when this was filmed, they used like the people who actually often just cosplay in there as extras. So it was kind of like, you know, well, you can use the site to do the filming, but the crew, the actual extras that are in there, actually, people will probably do that all the time anyway.
The guy that's sitting at the piano, obviously he's not playing the Red Dwarf theme tune because Howard Goodall's done that, but the guy that's sitting at the piano pretending to play it is one of the guys that's interviewed in the little short documentary thing.
I think I said this recently, is I bought the Blu-ray because of Red Dwarf leaving Netflix, and who wants BritBox? And that's bound to be on it. And I haven't looked at the extras, which maybe I should have done, but I ran out of time. So I'll get that watch because that sounds fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing as well, just I say, just because we're talking about just Laredo as a general thing, well, the director said that they obviously had a really long schedule to book in, so they blocked a lot of shots that was obviously just to get everything you could possibly get into the shots, and so they would often film scenes that were in, like, sort of, they would set the shot up and actually film different scenes during the course of the day. And when I read that, I was like, isn't that how most movies work? Don't they normally? And I was like, well, why does that seem like it's an unusual thing?
Perhaps
for me, I was like,
perhaps it was unusual for a TV sitcom to do it, but I think that is
or even TV at the time, maybe.
Yeah,
it just seems like strange because obviously, logistically, you would do that, wouldn't you? You'd say, right, I'm going to film. You're going to storyboard it all out. That's basically what he said. They storyboarded it all out before they went out there because they only had limited time.
Yeah.
And I think they actually got through it a lot quicker than they thought as well. Even though Robert Llewellyn, for his mask, got glue in his eye, apparently.
Ow.
Yeah.
Ow.
Yeah, on the sets. It didn't work out too well at the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose that's an occupational hazard, but still, ow. And this set makes the episode. If they'd have had to have built sets in the BBC, it would have been tat. It would have been subpar to like 80s Doctor Who level of shit. And imagine if they hadn't found this and they'd have had to have green screened it. Well,
there are other sort of places they could have done it. I mean, the one that always springs to mind for me and was there at about that time is the American Adventure theme park near Derby, which had a little cowboy town type bit in it. And they used to do like shootout show type things. because I used to go there, once or twice a year when I was a kid. And
I'd forgotten about that, but you're right. I think I went there a couple of times. It wasn't as good as Alton Towers.
I preferred it to Alton Towers because Alton Towers had way more rides that I was way too scared to go on at that point.
Makes sense. Gulliver's World's still going, which is a surprise.
Yeah.
But that went a while ago.
Yeah, my final point on this is that, just from my research, is that apparently that Danny John Jules wanted to go back to Laredo and said it would make a very good Christmas special. So he's obviously thinking along your wavelines. Wow.
I mean, who doesn't love a special? So the Apocalypse Boys arrive and ask for Crichton, who comes and meets them at the door of the saloon. Death spits on him and then introduces war, famine, and pestilence. They then shoot the grounds to make him dance and demand he leaves town. Crichton throws his sheriff badge on the floor.
So, the Apocalypse Boys. Death is Dennis Lill again, the simulant. Yep. Brother War is Robert Inch, who was a prolific stuntman and still is, I believe, these days. At least was a few years ago because he was this stunt coordinator for Star Wars Rogue One.
That's
he was also
which was filmed in Rogue One. No, I'm not. I'm thinking of a different episode. I'm thinking The Force Awakens, which was filmed near me. So Derwent Water is when they go across the skip across the water. Yeah. That's all filmed. That was all filmed around here.
They filmed Puzzlewood, the forest down there. Is in Puzzlewood, which is near Ross-on-Wye.
Okay. So one thing I read, and it was on Wikipedia, so you may have read it too, was that he learned how to fire breathe in a day so that he could fire breathe for Brother War.
That's pretty awesome.
That's equal parts impressive and fucking psychotic.
Yes.
Love this guy.
He was Voldemort's stunt double in a lot of the Harry Potter films. So he's done some, proper big budget movies. Famine, it was Dinny Powell, who was, again, a stuntman, but he also did a bit of acting. He was Boog in Superman 2, which is one of the guys that General Zod throws through a window in a little saloon-type bar at one point.
Defenestration, that's called. I like that word. And I like a film with some defenestration, because then I can say the word defenestration when he defenestrates people.
Well,
I've learned something today.
There was a band called Defenestration 20-odd years ago.
Were they any good?
They were all right. They were basically Raging Speedhorn, but with a female singer.
That sounds right.
So, yeah, they were all right. Anyway, Pestilence, Jeremy Peters, who was an actor that the main person I remember him playing is he's got a bit part in Spaced as the James Eldridge, who's this freelance vivisectionist that kidnaps Colin the dog.
That is a deep cut, but still good.
It is. One of the other random extra actors is one of the cowpokes in the town. Is Dave Thompson, who has been in...
Not the guy who was a Teletubby.
Yeah.
He was fucking Tinky Winky.
He was. He's also been in... He's Elton John's stage manager in Rocket Man that came out last year, but he was Tinky Winky. Did you just know that from me saying the name Dave Thompson?
Yeah.
That's quite impressive.
Well, right, so the reason why is a mate of mine at school was called Dave Thompson, and then I subsequently discovered that another Dave Thompson was Tinky Winky, which is why I can never forget that Dave Thompson was Tinky Winky.
That's awesome.
One of my first jobs coming out of school was I used to work for direct inquiries.
Right.
What is now 118
yeah.
in the UK. That was 192 at that point. And my break was on at 10 to 10. And guess what? So I went upstairs, turned the television on every single morning for Teletubbies.
Brilliant.
I was 18 years old and I was watching Teletubbies.
Yeah, so I remember the first ever episode of Teletubbies because I was off school ill, and it was that level of ill where you just near enough hallucinating. And I was like, I'm just going to stick some random TV on. And then this sun appears with a fucking baby's face in it. And that was weird.
Have you ever heard about the X-File episode which has some evil Teletubbies in it?
No, but there was the Aphex Twin song with evil Teletubbies.
Yes. I think it was Girl Boy Song, I think.
I don't know.
This I'm gonna have to share. I'll share you this just for a second. This is obviously not coming on screen, but
We can put it on the socials.
put it on the socials. Yeah, can do. So this was in season 11 of the X-Files.
No way. How do I not remember that?
Yeah.
I didn't watch season 11, that's why.
Oh, is 11 one of the more recent ones?
Yeah.
Ah, that's
this,
why.
This one in particular was just ends up being outside the house. It's got the typical jump scare of like boom like that, and you just see this. It's evil.
That's hilarious.
That's scary as fuck.
It's even more freakier when you actually watch the episode because they're on TV and it's just like the freakiest thing you'll ever watch.
Is the new X-Files on Netflix or Disney Plus?
It'll be on Disney Plus.
I might give that a whirl then.
Give it a whirl, yeah. Yeah, season 11's good. But anyway, that's on my other podcast, the X-Cast. I'm on a podcast. I don't know if you
You're
know
on the
that.
2 most successful podcasts on our network.
Yeah. Star Trek Picard, Make It So, and the X-Cast. We've come in third.
Oh, the 3 most successful then.
And then
Dick.
Shipwrecked and Comatose.
Yeah. Anyway.
I wish I could say it was just because of my, exuberant charisma, but
I mean,
I'm not sure it's quite
you
right.
have a very soothing voice.
I do.
Oh, dear.
Kurt's Midnight Bath.
I mean, bloody hell, I might need to take a break if you keep doing that.
Take a break, Mark Adams. Anyway, carry on.
Crichton's life signs are very low, and the cat asks if they can get into his dream and help by turning themselves into little electronic people. And they use the VR machine.
And they put
Do you know
Red Dead Redemption 2 in.
Basically, yeah.
My actual, I need to complete that game. I'm probably only about 30% into it. My actual favorite thing about this episode is the cat getting things right and then listening to him. Yeah. I just love that. It's like, what, twice in one lifetime?
So you just quoted one of the lines I don't use as a quotable Red Dwarf. The other 2 in this scene, and I do it so much. And if people don't know what the fuck I'm referencing, I'll probably come across as a right douchebag. And if not, why not? And I do that so often. And I assume everyone knows Red Dwarf. But people probably think I'm a douchebag.
It's probably both.
Yeah. And the other one is when you're hot, you're hot. And I'm like, I do the little dance as well. I've realised, I never clocked it until we started doing this podcast, but I've realised that basically quotable Red Dwarf is quotable cat. I hadn't clocked that until we'd started going along and we got this far. But all my quotables, or like maybe 80% of them, are just the cat being fucking wonderful. Best character, best episode, quotable dwarf.
The Riviera Kid.
Yes, they use Streets of Laredo, which I think is such a clever little reference for the...
Yes.
That's the name of the Western that they play in the VR. I never knew that at the time. In fact, I only found out when we started talking about Laredo, so this year. And that's just such a nice little thing to do.
Absolutely. I think I was aware of it, but not so much later on. As you say, potentially, I think because of Elbow. Strangely enough, with Elbow, I actually won tickets to go and see them live, and that was the first introduction to them. It was just like a Twitter poll thing where you just retweeted, and I won a ticket to see him.
Cool,
but fantastic live. So I think it must have been about then. But last year there was a special on last year. I think I sent you boys a picture of it. I think was it someone like some TV show where it was Anton Deck or something like that, where
and they were in Laredo,
and they're actually in Laredo. Yeah. I was like, oh, that's Red Dwarf.
Yeah. The thematic characters they pick are Brett Riverboat for Lister, the knife man, Dangerous Dan McGrew for Rimmer, the hand-to-hand specialist, and the Riviera Kid for the cat, who is a
Dangerous Dan McGrew.
So did you notice that the stats added up to 300 for Riviera Kid and Brett Riverboat, but they only
200.
added up to 200 for the Dangerous Dan McGrew?
No, I did not.
Yep. I've got them all written down. Riviera Kid, stamina 40, charm 250, intelligence 10. So that's 300. Lister, Brett Riverboat, knife thrower, stamina 100, charm 100, intelligence 100, so an all-rounder. And then Dangerous Dan McGrew, bare fist fighting, stamina 100, charm 50, and intelligence 50.
You actually look at those stats, they kind of reflect the three characters that pick the characters.
Yeah.
It's just another little clever little thingy. And the fact that Rimmer's stats are lower than the other two is such a sideswipe. It's just great.
Why didn't I catch that? My favourite thing in TV meta, and I didn't catch it.
And how many times have you watched this as well, Kurt?
Yeah,
Twice.
It's probably entered my mind to watch it. Yeah, twice. I don't like it. It's probably one of the worst Red Dwarf episodes of all time.
Podcast's over. But importantly, Lister explains that to exit, you need to clap. They ride into the town on horses, enter the saloon, and Rimmer asks for a white wine and soda. Cat asks,
Do we know who can and can't ride horses?
Yes.
Does anyone?
I do.
I've got it in my notes, but I can't find it.
Right. So Robert Llewellyn and Danny John Jules are both all right with horses. They're used to riding them. And Chris Barry and Craig Charles had never ridden horses before. Chris Barry was absolutely fucking terrified and was sort of clinging on for dear life, whereas Craig Charles does not give a shit about anything and worked out that he can make the horses run by basically slapping them on the arse. So, he did that to Chris Barry's horse, which then ran off, galloping off in miles away. With him screaming, which I've been there, I've done that. When horse riding when I was a kid with my sister on this like horse pony trekking sort of thing, and my sister was only about 8 at the time. Her horse decided to stop, so she screamed at it, which made all of the fucking horses scatter. Mine ran through a bramble bush and then through a river.
Shit.
It was fine.
So yeah, I do feel like they might have had more about them riding into town with the horses if it weren't for Chris Barry being petrified. The amount of money you have to spend to get horses, they didn't have much horse action on screen. But that's probably why. They enter into the saloon, and Rimmer asks for a white wine and soda. Kat asks for 3 tequilas, and Lister finally gets it right with 3 shots of gulping whiskey. Rimmer wants a ginger ale, but they don't have it.
I am. Yeah, that ginger ale thing, the mixer, that is me. Because I can drink, and a lot of people know that I can drink.
I have drunk with you, and you didn't touch the sides on you, and I had hangover the next day.
But it's one drink only. It's lager, or in the past it used to be cider until I was about 25, 26, but lager, that's it. That's all I drink. So I can drink lots and lots of it. But when it comes to things like whiskies and stuff, I love Jack Daniels and Coke. I love, even Bell's and Coke. So I love like the shorts, but I cannot drink anything neat. It's not happening. I would be throwing up in that hat if you gave me a straight drink.
Fascinating. And interestingly, the one drink that I can drink neat and I really enjoy it and it doesn't affect me like other people is tequila. I will, everyone goes through the fucking ritual of salt and lime. I'm like, this is pretty smooth. What's wrong with you? Can't touch whiskey.
Does it make you happy?
Does it make you happy?
Okay.
Oh, Terrorvision are an underrated band.
Yeah, they are. So, Rimmer takes his shot and, as you said, pukes into a big bloke's hat. He's called Bear Strangler McGee, and Lister eventually pays him off.
Yes, well, that pays for the hat. Now what about the insult? And then Rimmer says, okay, you're a fat bearded git, which is fucking brilliant.
It is. And this scene has so much iconic shit in it. The Red Dwarf theme we've already discussed. The outfits are iconic. And the Riviera Kid dance, man. Just the Riviera Kid dance.
Let's see if your shooting's as fancy as your dancing.
It's just so good.
Did you notice that Chris Barry's Dangerous Dan McGraw voice was the same voice that he used to use as Ronald Reagan in Spit and Image?
Yeah, Dangerous Dan
No,
McGraw.
I did not, but that's brilliant. I love it. I love that it's Ronald Reagan. Wasn't Ronald Reagan in some westerns?
He was in a fair few westerns, yeah, because he was an actor. Yeah.
I think that's the thing for me with this episode. I actually really, as I say, I really like this episode. It's definitely in my top 10. And it'll be interesting at the end of this series, as the BBC era to actually come up with a top 10.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because it feels like it's time to maybe look at that, because moving forward we're losing Rob, aren't we? So just to kind of pull that together. But I'm not necessarily a big fan of westerns, so I think there's enough in this episode for me that keeps me entertained, because it is a comedy, and because we don't get into the set of the western until literally like a second, 2/3 into it, kind of thing, or halfway into it.
Yeah.
So there's not a massive amount in here, and obviously it's the game aspect as well. It's not it's not like they've gone to a western planet. It's literally there in that game. So
Yeah.
I think there's enough for my brain to like cognitively take it on board, but that's probably where some of my kind of like, I'm not as keen with some of the tropes.
I
Yeah.
don't like westerns either. I think I've seen about 10 ever, but I just fucking love this episode, and I don't know why.
Oh, the Good, the Bad, the Ugly I've seen. I think that's the only one I've seen.
The soundtracks are generally fucking brilliant if they're Ennio Morricone.
Yeah, well, he did the Good, Bad, the Ugly, didn't he?
Yeah. He did
Morricone,
mostly
yeah.
like the Sergio Leone ones, didn't he? Yeah. And you've got, sort of for the incidental music throughout this, you've got Howard Goodall basically trying to recreate that kind of sound, but using the synthesizers available in 1993 rather than proper instruments. And it's dated a little bit.
Disagree. Fucking iconic. Shut up, Colin. Crichton enters the saloon with his guns and wants to trade them for more booze. He's completely forgotten who he is and is completely immersed in this world. Jimmy uses a whip to swipe away the booze bottle and teases him relentlessly. Lister stands up and defends him using his knife skills and humiliates Jimmy, who deserved it, the bell end. I think as a kid, like, obviously I must have watched this at like 10 or 12, 13 maybe. And I think this scene really resonated with me because I'd been bullied as a kid and this cunt got his comeuppance, and I really, really liked that. And as an adult, I still love it because you humiliate someone, you deserve humiliation. I still think like that. And this scene really mattered to me that he did get his comeuppance, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, definitely.
So Jimmy instructs his goons to shoot him, and the cat shoots the bullets out of the air. Are we going to talk about the smeg up now?
No, we don't have to, because you knew it was coming. So...
Crichton uses the distraction to leave, and Lister says they have to stop him leaving town or they're dead. And I love the metaphor.
Is this the bit where
It's great. As a metaphor goes, it's really great that they've thought about what would be the way that Crichton would fail to release the Dove program.
Yeah.
And that's if he leaves town, which is so thematic for the Western. It's just dead clever, innit?
And you've got the bit where Crichton's running towards the exit of the town, so Jake Riviera fires his gun, the bullet bounces off loads of things, and then knocks the sign down, which conks him on the head.
It's ridiculous, but it's funny.
It's
rebounds
brilliant.
are
And,
silly.
but Robert Llewellyn actually had to time that perfectly with running so that the thing fell on his head. And that was a real stunt that he did at the time, and it's great.
I would have assumed it was someone else doing that stunt because it clocks him dead.
It does.
Dead centre in the side of the head. It's like, ow, that must have hurt.
Yep.
Have we missed the? No, I think it was this scene as well where when they're in the bar fight where Rimmer's having
Rimmer clears house. It's brilliant.
Thing. Yeah,
and then he goes,
yeah, I think that is marvelous.
Another quotable dwarf there for you, Kurt.
That barroom brawl's a bit like the barroom brawl in Backwards as well, so it's a nice sort of throwback to that.
Yeah.
I've actually got Backwards and Marvellous as my two notes.
Excellent.
See, it's just it's so good. Did I mention it's good? They take Crichton back to his room and they sober him up with raw coffee. And he works out who everyone is, and another wonderful quotable dwarf. Every time I have a hangover, or almost every time I have a hangover, I describe myself as having breath that could open bank vaults. It's just the perfect way to describe when you open your mouth and it feels like leather and, it's bleh. It's part of why I don't drink very often anymore, because that's the worst part of the fucking hangover. And I love that line. And I think that's one that I used a little bit later, whereas a lot of the quotable dwarf was stuff I used from childhood onwards. But obviously, at 14...
You didn't have that many hangovers.
Yeah, at 14, I didn't drink, so it didn't really resonate as much. And, And then, of course, there's the throwback to the Smee He gag, which is wonderful. And, it's just... Like I said before, the balance of the soft reboot, but not shying away from jokes that give a reward to people who've watched Red Dwarf from the start. The balance is perfect across the series, not just this episode, but the balance is perfect. The cat points out that there are no barrels to his guns and they have doves on them. And Lister says that must be the key because it was called a dove program.
So that's where we discussed the other week, wasn't it, with the General Patton mention. I can't remember if it was last week or the week before, where we're talking about General Patton and just his life that he's had in believing in reincarnation and all that kind of thing. And he actually had two guns, actually, that were formatted using ivory tusks, I think it was, from what I remember. And it's almost like, for me, I may be looking way too deep into it, but you know when things kind of play subconsciously on people's minds, if the writers have been writing about General Patton or have used his name, then has this kind of seeped in, and actually the Good Dove program as part of the script has been created using the two guns, and it's also in a western as well. So
could be,
I think it's a natural way to do it, but I just found it fascinating that reading into General Patton that he actually has his own bespoke guns made.
Yeah.
As we know, I'm not much of a technical guy when it comes to computers and shit. Does a Dove program exist as a thing if there's a virus in a computer?
I don't think so. I was trying to find that out, and it was just coming up with this episode of Red Dwarf when I was Googling it.
So they have just apparently made it up. They don't...
I think they have.
Yeah, because you'd have to, for a virus, you'd pretty much have to either go to a backup, or you'd have to like sort of wipe it and reboot it into the system, and that's why you've got antiviral software actually on the computer itself to stop those attacks.
Right, so there isn't actually curative stuff. You just have to remove and replace is the way you would.
I think it depends on the virus, but a lot of the time it's you have to remove the infected files entirely. Rather, you can't clean them.
Good grief, I didn't know that, but like I said,
easily.
I'm not very techie.
I mean, I'm coming from a techie background, but not in anything like programming. Matt Latham might know.
Yeah, Matt may say that we're all talking bollocks because I haven't got a fucking clue. I'm just busking it.
He'll be able to have a look in his index of conditional formatting for his.
He'll have it on a spreadsheet somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, using the Scarlet programming language and stuff like that. He'll have an idea.
Sorry, I asked the question and I switched off.
It's all right. We're making it up.
Switch it off, turn it off and turn it back on again is the way I deal with things. including in my own head, apparently.
We once had some for a number of years, some programmers that used to come from around the world come to my site for a conference, and they would bring up on a 60-foot screen, bearing in mind the programming language, and they were talking about Xbox games and all kinds, and using certain programming languages and all kinds like that. And then they would have a night where they would talk about, just general thing, and they'd have someone come up and do a speech and stuff. And they were doing this like pub quiz, but it was on programming language, right? So the entire hour that I was doing the sound for them, I got one joke, and it was a Next Generation joke. The rest were just like, what on earth are you talking about?
Fuck.
I was so happy when I understood the data joke, though. I was like, I get that. And that was it. It was a fleeting moment.
Fascinating, isn't it, that you can completely have something that you know nothing about, and everyone else... Yeah, I've been in that situation, and it's boring as fuck more than anything.
With you just mentioning Star Trek The Next Generation, this was the episode that Patrick Stewart saw, not knowing what it was, and was about to call his lawyers, because it's apparently very similar to the
Fistful of Datas
episode, which came out the previous year. But then he...
Oh, right, that come out the foot. Right,
do you think it was inspired
92.
by Fistful of Datas then?
It could easily have been. I think
Fistful of Datas, if you haven't seen it, it's when the program on the holodeck goes wrong, and it feeds in loads of variations of data. The data becomes the sheriff.
I remember it.
Yeah.
There's a jailer. Then Worf has to become the sheriff of the town to get in there, and he has to things like that. So yes, that's Fistful of Datas. So.
Yeah.
The most fun part of that episode was Worf being a curmudgeon, but the most fun of most episodes is Worf being a curmudgeon.
Yeah, because it wasn't Alex was in at that point as well, wasn't it? His son. I think he was given the deputy. So,
oh, why have I started a fucking discussion on Star Trek?
Star Trek Picard's coming out soon. I might do a podcast about it. It'll be on air by the time we say it.
I'll probably listen to that. I'll probably watch Star Trek Picard. Will you watch Star Trek Picard, Colin?
Nah.
The Apocalypse boys arrive, and the boys from the Dwarf come to meet them. Death secretly removes everyone's special skills with that really cool fucking effect again.
That scene is metal as fuck.
He does the horns.
He's throwing the horns, and then he's got that cool, like, fucking green electric-y effect on him. It looks like it should be a fucking Judas Priest video.
It does. I love it. Not knowing about losing his special skills, Rimmer challenges War to a one-on-one and gets absolutely battered.
Yes, what he says is, who's got the guts to go with me one-on-one, hand-to-hand, mano-a-mano?
Mano-a-mano.
Mano-a-mano, which means hand-to-hand.
Oh, yeah. Cat drops his guns as he tries to shoot, and Lister drops his knives. They try to exit, but they're sealed in.
Yeah, so just on that, because I think it's quite pertinent to it, is that happens before Rimmer starts.
Yeah, it does.
Because they try and warn him,
he
don't they?
Listen though, yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing that when they try to exit, the Rimmer dance. Oh, I mean, I've always said I love slapstick. I love visual gags, and I mentioned the thing with the eyes previously. The first time you watch it, you see the dance and it's funny. The second time you watch it, you watch his face and his horror as he does this dance. Makes it just so much better. It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Is this the most flamenco influenced episode of Red Dwarf ever?
It's great. It's great. It's just great, and it's just great. It's just great.
You can't frighten me, I'm a coward is an excellent line.
Yeah, I've written that down.
Ah, dear. They exit by removing their helmets after the cat suggests it, and it's down to Crichton. But I want to point out that the cat suggests it and then takes off his own glove.
Yeah, and then his own
boot
foot thingy.
And I get it's for
foot
a gag.
thingy. Boot is definitely a better word than foot thingy.
It is. Yes. I get that it's for a gag, but why didn't they give that line to Lister? There's no need for the cat to have been the one who came up with the get the helmets off, but it does
because he's already had good ideas in the episode.
Oh, true.
Yeah. He's on a run,
and the other two aren't thick enough to take their glove and boot off first. But it still came to me as like, that makes no sense. Literally, you said take the helmets off and then took your glove off, and that's the only criticism I have about the entire episode. It's down to Crichton, and the Apocalypse Boys shoot him repeatedly. However,
just before that, there is another line that Robert Llewellyn absolutely fucking relishes saying, just like the "it's insane" bit from one of the earlier series, where he's like, "Go for your guns, you scum-sucking mollusks."
It's a good line. It is a good line, and they shoot him. And then he draws his guns as his last kind of breath, and they turn into doves.
They do.
And they were real doves, right? I don't think they were...
Yes.
They can't have been computer gen because they were too good for that time.
There is a smeg up of him trying to get the doves to fly in the right direction.
Oh, there is.
Because the original plan was him to just let go of them and then fly away, and they just didn't want to. They just hopped down onto the floor. So he actually had to sort of throw them up into the air.
Which you can actually see in the footage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, the bit where he was getting shot, so you got all the, like, squibs blowing up on him, which he was talking about in that Return to Laredo thing, where he says, they always tell you that they're not going to hurt, and they fucking do.
Right. But the whole stuff, I mean, obviously, I don't do as much research as possibly I should, but reading the Wikipedia article on this, all the interesting facts I've got from there, whoever's written the Wikipedia article has got them from watching the DVD extras and the commentaries, and had I known that, I'd have read Wikipedia after watching the commentaries. And like I said before on the first episode, they're entertaining, and it's just the four actors having a chat, really. But
yeah,
there's nothing on Wikipedia anymore that I was like, well, someone writes something a bit better researched on Wikipedia, and then I realised it was Wikipedia.
Yeah, I mean, as I've said before, and because we're talking about research and stuff like that, I'll just mention my notes where I get my stuff from, which is from the book Stacey Sleek, which was written by Jane Killick. So that's the one where she was on set during Back to Reality, I mentioned, I think, back in that episode. So she's it's written in the format of what happened between seasons and on episodes, favourite laugh, behind the scenes, and what the episode's about.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of where I get my stuff from. But it's definitely a book, which, you know, it's short and sweet. You know, it's literally just little bits about the episodes and stuff like that, which is worth buying if you are interested in.
Have you found that stuff from her book has ended up on Wikipedia plagiarised like it has been from the DVD commentaries, or is that actually still useful as a book?
It's very rare that I actually look at Wikipedia. I haven't looked at these two episodes on Wikipedia, so I tend to just go off what I've read on here, just so I've got that kind of, you know, because I know that used to, or Matt or Carl will actually potentially do that. So I'm just coming at it from that angle. So, but I wouldn't want to be amiss by saying I've done some research. I've literally bought a book.
Well, the stuff you come up with that you bring to the table doesn't tend to be something I've read or researched, and I basically watch the commentaries and read Wikipedia and look up a few references elsewhere, but they don't seem to have plagiarised your book, so please continue.
Yeah.
I'm guessing they possibly mentioned this in the commentary. Are you aware about the bit where Janet Street Porter nearly got this, or tried to get this episode shut down?
Yeah,
there is a paragraph in the book about that, actually.
Yeah, so she was the head of BBC Arts and Culture at the time, and she read the script and sent a message immediately telling them to shut it down because it'd be too difficult to film, too time-consuming and too costly. And luckily, they'd already wrapped filming it the day before. And they were already working on the post-production.
Brilliant. Brilliant. That shut her up, didn't it?
Yeah.
I did know that, though. Yeah, that was on Wikipedia, unfortunately. So, they exit the programme. It's created an antidote, but there is 2 minutes left to impact. They rush into the cockpit, but they don't manage to do it in time. They hit a swamp, but they do manage to escape quickly. They head away into a sunset, which isn't possible in space, and they say, "Yeehaw!"
And it's not a swamp, it's lava. Because it's an awesome bit of model work.
Oh, it is, yeah, okay. It's kind of lava.
Yeah,
isn't it?
they go into a lava pond type thing and then come back out of it. And it's a brilliant bit of model work.
And Starbug is a lot more robust than I realised if it can cope with that.
So I've got some notes on this just from our friend Jane Killick. She says that the Gunmen model shots, the model shots for Gunmen were also spectacular. A sequence in Starbug crashing into a lava planet in a fiery splashdown and later emerging again with lava dripping off its body. After so many planets made of rocks and covered in snow, the orange glow of the lava made the sequences look really different. Ironically, this is not the original plan. The writers, when putting this episode together, wanted to give Peter Ragg's special effects team an easy time over crashing Starbug. So they wanted to crash into an ocean planet. But unfortunately, this is me summarising now, but unfortunately, water doesn't apparently scale up.
Yeah.
So when you're scaling, it doesn't work. So they ended up doing the lava thing and they ended up costing a bit more.
So you mean the small Starbug, it would have looked weird with the water splashing because it was a smaller scale. Got you.
Yeah. Because fire and explosions you can make look massive by slowing them down. But you can't really do that so much with water.
No, that would look weird, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Ah, good grief. But I'll tell you what, boys, I'm tired. That was a hell of an episode, and I got even giddier than I do on a normal episode of this podcast.
Well, we've got another one to record.
I know we do. I'd have told you off if we hadn't already told everyone that that's how we record.
Yeah.
I think it was you that did it the first time around.
Oh, it's me that does it all the time.
Right? Right, that was fucking fun. Kurt, where can people find you on the internet?
Find me on Twitter at rmuldrake, RMULDRAKE. Podcasts you may need to look out for around this time would be, as I mentioned, Make It So, the Star Trek Picard podcast. Find that at Jean-Luc Podard. The Yellow Jackets podcast, No Book Club.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, you've actually, I think, forced the issue of it coming out quicker than we were planning on it. So, which you can find on Twitter at Yellow Jacket Pod on Twitter. That's the best place to find me. On other ones like Xcast as well, which, as you say, is the flagship for We Made This. So, we'll just briefly go over that. Mention the Teletubbies thing. So the Xcast, which is the X_cast. So that's the best place to find me.
Colin, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter at Mogwai Fear Satan. You can find my other podcasts, We Dig Music, where me and my friends Tracy and Ian are going through finding our favourite songs from each year and voting on them and then arguing about them a lot. It's We Dig Music, just search for it on a podcast app. And free with this month's issue, my other podcast where it's me and Ian and a different guest each month, which we really need to record Kurt soon.
I'm on holiday soon,
Excellent.
So I can do whenever.
So possibly that may have gone out by the time this episode goes out. That's us listening to an old free CD from Kerrang, Metal Hammer, Q, that kind of thing, and finding the various horrors and delights within. So search for free with this month's issue. Both of those podcasts are on the We Made This network, but you can also find them on wedigpodcast.com.
If you're looking for me, it's at Mark Adams HC on Twitter and Instagram. I've got a number of podcasts. I'm going to briefly talk about the ones that have been around a while, and then I'm going to go into detail on the new one. I'm on Chucky Vision, which is a podcast about the Child's Play and Chucky franchise, at Chucky Vision on Twitter. I'm also on Right in the Childhood, which is a podcast about children's TV and, well, frankly, rose-tinted glasses. That's at RITC Pod on Twitter. I'm also regularly on Podcast 616, which is our MCU and wider Marvel Universe podcast, at podcast 616 _ I don't know. Just search for it. I don't run that Twitter. And the other one that I have recently launched, which will have 1, maybe 2 episodes by the time this episode airs, is called Geek Polymath, at Geek Polymath on Twitter. And that is about the fact that I am a little bit of a, well...
Geek Polymath.
Yeah, kind of, I don't really have a big geeky thing that I'm massively into, but I like a little bit of everything. And so what I'm doing is I'm getting an expert on each geeky thing that I quite like to come and have a big fat dirty chat about it with me. And the first 3 episodes, this is an exclusive, it probably isn't by this point, but the first 3 episodes are on Marvel Comics, RuPaul's Drag Race, and craft beer. And going forward, I'm going to be looking at stuff like Star Trek, The X-Files, and various other things, but stuff that other people are really fucking into, and I just quite like. And so far, I've had some really lovely chats, and that's going out monthly on the 3rd Tuesday of the month. All of the podcasts we've talked about here are on Spotify, Apple, and all the podcast providers that are worth bothering with, so just search for their names. So thank you very much for joining us for this episode of Shipwrecked and Comatose, and until next time,
I'm dangerous. Kurt North.
Yeehaw!
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast, was created and produced by Mark Adams and Kurt North. You can find us on Twitter at Red Dwarf Pod, and we are part of the We Made This Podcast network, which can be found online at wemadethispod.com or on Twitter at We Made This Pod.
Hello everyone, this is Tony, Network Chief of We Made This. As you know, our podcast network brings together a brilliant assortment of talent who talk about all kinds of pop culture content, such as the episode you've just listened to. We're not going anywhere, but we'd love to keep the lights on for even longer if you're able to support our network on Patreon. For just £2 a month, you get your name in lights and the satisfaction of knowing you're helping us produce more great audio. And for £3 a month, you'll get your name in lights, but you'll also get access to an exclusive bi-monthly podcast from the We Made This talent pool on podcasting, pop culture, and, well, you tell us. We'll take your suggestions. For less than the price of a coffee per month, you can help keep We Made This going. Just head to patreon.com/We Made This. That's patreon.com/We Made This. And get the ball rolling.
Elsewhere on We Made This.
Academy Watch, a prestige film podcast.
A lot of these other characters that are not human have these bizarre names, non-Anglo names. And then we have Paul.
I mean, I kind of wanted a Brian or a Gary to rock up next to him as well.
Yeah, like a Gary, like a real like Scouse guy from.
I was about to do a Scouse accent, but then I thought better of it.
Yeah, let's leave the Scouse. We've already offended the Pauls. Let's leave the Garys alone.
Pick a disc.
Everyone was sort of caught up in the cowboyness of the post 9/11 world, like to an extent. In the immediate aftermath of 9/11, George W. Bush basically took on the role of John Wayne. He was like, I'm going to find them and I'm going to catch them and I'm going to put them to justice, that sort of thing. And I think for a long while that had kind of been accepted, and that was okay, you can lead us forward, you know what you're doing. And then, some other things began happening and other wheels started turning, and that's where I think this album managed to land. Was there were a load of people that were thinking about, is this right? Should we be doing this? And it kind of validated that school of thought because it said it in such an eloquent way, and it's very, very pointed at its administrations and its message of anti-war, not necessarily anti-this war, but anti-all wars.
right in the childhood.
There's other boy bands include the likes of McFly. McFly was a big one.
I remember McFly.
McFly, Busted.
McFly was shit busted.
Oh, that's a controversial.
I could name 5 or 8. Well, 3 or 4.
Here we go, because I'm a big Busted and McFly
I could name
fan.
3 or 4 Busted songs.
Go
I
on.
could name you no McFly songs.
Name me some Busted.
Year 3000.
Yeah.
Shit me, I'm sure I know more than Year 3000.
Glad I crashed the wedding.
Yeah, that one.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.